うした？続けないのか？
化け物だ。
終わりだろうか、グレイ教諭。
I freaking love this anime. I absolutely love that Rei's OP character power, his OP Chad power is over 9,000. Okay, for real though, I love this anime, and you know, there's two very specific call-outs that I made during last week's episode. Call-out number one was when he was meeting with his master, when he was meeting with his teacher. You know, they had a very specific conversation of like, don't use the thing, but if you need to use the thing, I trust you to know when to use the thing to use the thing. And I was like, I bet you next week he uses the thing. And sure freaking enough, he uses the thing, which is essentially just him transforming into this Iceblade Sorcerer thing. And apparently, you know, we have been... The anime, I feel, has done, and this is personal opinion here, you may feel different if you are a big fan of the source material. They might have gone super in-depth. But as somebody who has no familiarity with the source material, I feel confident in saying that they've done a pretty good job. I'm not going to say great, but pretty good job of introducing us to the system to which the magic is, to which mages exist, right? They have formulaically laid out the system that, hey, it's your brain power versus in people's engrams, and the way that your brain is able to kind of code and solidify magic power to do wind, fire, ice, whatever. And they have really broken it down to us that it's basically like these inner workings within your brain to where you're basically able to code certain magic, you know, here. Now, the reason I say that is because then when Rei transformed, you know, he was able to go like anti-code, blah, 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 you know, 94868, blah, blah, blah. He didn't say any numbers, but, you know, he did anti-code, whatever. He's able to dissipate magic. He did the same thing when he was fighting the Ordinary, you know, and I was like, okay, that is really cool that they've gone to this level here. And I was like, I feel like just for a dumb OP anime that they've gone and world built enough to kind of really, for us to be like, oh yeah, that's okay, anti-code, you know, that makes sense to me on like why that's happening, why it's occurring and stuff like that. So that's the first part. Is last week I called like, yo, he says he's not gonna use the thing. Next week he's gonna use the thing. The second thing I called was Miss Gray, which was the teacher, and I was like, I bet she's the bad guy. And even last week I was talking to you guys, and I was like, yo, I bet the person in the robe that's like, you know, I bet that's the teacher. And sure freaking enough, it was. And I'm not mad that I called it in any way. It was just so expected. But the fact is like she got humiliated and annihilated. But she was actually really cool too, because she had the eye, you know, and she ended up unfortunately probably doing some irreversible damage to herself, which is she grabbed. Do I have a pen or anything around me? No, I don't have one. But she grabbed like something. She just like stabbed herself, you know, in the jugular over here. Well, I guess that's the jugulars here. She stabbed herself in the dome. With this pendant thing, like it was like a night. Like she had to stab her brain, to transform into this demon thing that she ended up transforming into. It seems irreversible, and it seems like, you know, Rei will definitely overcome this thing because he's part of the 7 wonders of the world. But one thing that we did learn, which, you know, again, I assumed it, but I just, you know, it wasn't specifically stated, is there was one and two paths. It was either Rei himself was the Iceblade that went into retirement, or the second thing was he was the successor. Well, it was solidified here that his master, the blonde-haired lady who's now severely injured, who, you know, can no longer walk, she was the Iceblade Sorcerer, and she passed her knowledge on to Rei, and now he is the Iceblade Sorcerer. Doesn't mean that she lost her magic or anything. She just, mobility-wise, she's not able to be at the same level she was before. So that's just something that I thought was a nice little touch, too, is that it's something that you could guess, you could put 2 and 2 together, but I'm just glad they specifically said it and they solidified it here. I thought that was incredibly important, too. Last thing I'll really touch on is, you know, those 2 things. I was very excited that those 2 things came to fruition. The last 2 things I'll touch on is, one, Amelia has asked Rei now twice this episode alone, who are you? Who are you? And he was like, he's finally come around to the fact that I'm going to have to tell them who I am. Again, we got a flashback from his teacher saying, you know, trust those around you to know blah blah blah. So he's gonna tell Amelia and his close knit group here of who he is finally, which is good. We're gonna get there. And the second thing was Mr. Ordinary. What was his name? I wrote it down. He was part because they try to make us Mr. Aluminium, Alumium. They try to make us feel bad for him. I don't feel bad for this ass hat. But they gave us his backstory of like he was he's a mid noble. He's basically like middle class noble, and he tried to get his family out of debt. And I'm like, yo, if you're trying to do all this, if you're trying to white knight your family, what the F does Ray have to do with any of that, dude? His success has nothing to do with you also being successful. So I don't know why he's so obsessed with Ray. It's unhealthy. But regardless, he's plenty how do you call it? He's the sense of humor behind it, because every time he comes on screen, he yells "ordinary." I freaking lose my mind. I think I went I was gasping for air. I was laughing so much. So I'm glad he's in the anime nonetheless. Well, I'm gonna leave you guys on those thoughts there. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below for this episode. Let me know if it's too predictable for you. Let me know what you think about everything else. And did you also suspect Miss Gray? All right, I'm gonna see you guys next week. Peace.